Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Lesson from the Quran by thinker of the Quran, Allama Ghulam Ahmad Parwez, Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 228 to 233. Brothers, today is June 8, 1969, and in our series of Quranic lessons, we had reached verse 227 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Today we begin from verse 228. The nature and characteristics of Quranic principles and values for humanity. As I mentioned previously, the Quran generally provides principles and fundamental laws of life. This is because the book was meant to transcend the boundaries of time and space, serving as a code of life for all of humanity until the Day of Judgment. Therefore, it had to present eternal principles and values that remain unchanged. Based on these principles, the details of practical laws are left to the discretion of each community, so they may formulate specific rules according to the needs of their era and determine the methods of implementation. The Quran itself provides only a limited number of detailed laws, and most of these pertain to family life. This is because family relationships, such as those between parents and children, siblings, and especially between husband and wife, are permanent and unchanging. These bonds do not alter with time. Hence, the Quran has given most of its injunctions concerning family life.
Importance of marital relationships and the commands given for them. In this matter, the Quran first addresses the relationship between husband and wife because the harmony of their bond determines the atmosphere of the home. When the home environment is pleasant, the upbringing of children is sound, and when this unit, in Quranic terms, becomes a reflection of paradise, then as the walls of homes extend outward, society itself begins to enjoy the breezes of paradise. For this reason, the Quran has given detailed laws concerning the life of husband and wife. The first condition it sets for marriage is harmony of thought and outlook. After that, it makes clear that marriage is not a bond that once tied can never be released regardless of circumstances. If conditions become unpleasant and living together is no longer possible, then the contract of mutual companionship can be dissolved. But even in dissolution, the Quran prescribes a beautiful and dignified process. This is why it has given specific laws in this domain. In the previous verse, the Quran instructed that first efforts should be made for reconciliation. But if you have resolved upon divorce, then it must take place according to the prescribed rule. The word talaq literally means to be freed, and in context it signifies the annulment of the marital contract, the dissolution, cancellation, and separation of that agreement. Just as aqd means the establishment of a contract, which is not achieved merely by repeating words but by actually concluding the agreement, so talaq means the ending of that contract. Only when the bond is dissolved does it become divorce. Regarding divorced women, the Quran says, وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَهُنَّ أَنْ يَكْتُمْنَ مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ فِي أَرْحَامِهِنَّ إِنْ كُنَّ يُؤْمِنَّ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. This means that after divorce, a woman must wait for a specified period of 3 courses before she can marry again, and she must not conceal what Allah has created in her womb if she believes in Allah and the Last Day.
Quranic principles and values in case of divorce. There is great wisdom in the waiting period, iddah, prescribed by the Quran. The purpose is clearly explained. If the woman is pregnant, she must declare it. The waiting period is 3 quru, which refers to 3 menstrual cycles, generally 3 months. This ensures certainty about whether the woman is carrying a child from her former husband. The rights of the unborn child must be safeguarded, and it must be clear who the father is. For this reason, the Quran commands that the woman should not conceal her pregnancy, but make it known. Thus, she must wait for 3 months, or if she is pregnant, until childbirth. This period is called iddah. As mentioned earlier, the Quran does not state matters only once. It repeats them in different places for clarity. When all these verses are studied together, the issue becomes completely clear. The waiting period is one such matter, explained across multiple verses and compiled comprehensively in works such as Quranic laws.
As I mentioned earlier, in 228, it is stated that the waiting period is 3 guru. Guru refers to menstrual cycles, meaning the interval between one monthly cycle and the next. Thus, 3 menstrual cycles are required so that it becomes certain whether the woman is pregnant from her former husband or not. The rights of the unborn child must be safeguarded, and clarity about the father's identity is essential. If a woman has reached an age where menstruation has ceased, or due to illness menstruation does not occur, then her waiting period is 3 months, 65-4. For a pregnant woman, the waiting period is until childbirth, not 3 months, 65-4. If a woman is divorced before consummation of marriage, then she has no waiting period, 3349. For a widow, the waiting period is 4 months and 10 days, 2234. Although the Quran does not explicitly state the waiting period for a pregnant widow, it can be inferred from the ruling for a divorced pregnant woman that her waiting period is also until childbirth. During iddah, the divorced woman's maintenance, food, clothing, and shelter remains the responsibility of the former husband at the same standard as during their married life, 241, 611, 6567. She should not be expelled from the home, and she herself should remain there. However, if circumstances become strained or disputes arise, then she may reside elsewhere. In case of disagreement or conflict initiated by the woman, the Quran prescribes the same procedure as it does for the man. For a widow, 1 year of maintenance and residence is the responsibility of the husband's estate, 240. If she chooses to move elsewhere before that period, then this responsibility ends. Widowhood and residence during iddah. The Quran has described the residence of a widow in her husband's home as a facilitation, not as a punishment. The common notion that after the husband's death, the widow cannot leave the house or room for 4 months and 10 days is incorrect. The issue is not about being confined to a dwelling. The Quran has not prescribed this as a penalty. In Surah An-Nisa, we will see that the widow is not subjected to punishment. The instruction was that she should not be expelled from the house, and she herself should also remain there, provided the atmosphere is suitable. If the environment is not favorable, then the matter is different. But it is not that she is penalized by being forbidden to step outside for that period. In many traditions, it is practiced that she cannot leave even for necessity, but this is not the intent of the Quran. Regarding iddah, the Quran says, وَبُؤُولَتُهُنَّ أَحَقُّ بِرَدِّهِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ إِنْ أَرَادُوا إِصْلَاحًا 228. This refers to the period when she has not yet remarried. If the husband had divorced her, there is no prohibition against remarrying him during iddah. He has the prior right if reconciliation is desired, and the essential condition is that the woman must also consent.
No man can forcefully own a woman. Remember, without the woman's consent, marriage cannot take place under any circumstances. The Quran has declared that it is not lawful for you to inherit women against their will and become their masters. Only through mutual consent does this contract come into existence. Brothers, people often say that Islam gave rights to women, but when we look deeper into life's issues, we see that men were made rulers over women. Then the question arises, what rights remain for the one who is made subordinate? The Quran, however, expressed this matter in 4 words. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ 2:228. In these 4 words lies immense comprehensiveness. Whatever responsibility is placed upon the woman, a corresponding right is established for her. For every liability, a right accrues. This is the balance of justice in family life. As many responsibilities as are imposed, equal rights must be granted. But in prevailing traditions, all responsibilities are placed upon women, while all rights are given to men, making them rulers. Then traditions go further, saying that if anyone were permitted to prostrate before another, it would be the woman before the man. The husband is considered the woman's majazi khuda, a metaphorical god. After Allah comes the husband. In such a framework, rights for women are not even imagined.
Quranic condition regarding 4 marriages. Brothers, the concept of rights is contained in those 4 words. Every responsibility corresponds to a right. But what happens in practice is quite strange. A fragment of a Quranic verse is taken out of context. The verse often recited in connection with marrying multiple wives is فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ 4:3. Marry women of your choice, 2, 3, or 4. This portion is read at marriage ceremonies and even printed on marriage forms. But anyone with basic knowledge of Arabic knows that the word fankihu begins with fa, meaning then. A sentence cannot begin with then unless there is a preceding condition. The condition is وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ 4:3, and if you fear. The full verse reads وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ 4:3, meaning if you fear that you cannot deal justly with orphan women, widows left without support, with children whose affairs cannot be resolved fairly, then one way to protect them is to marry them, thereby ensuring their care. And then comes the next condition, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً 4:3, meaning, but if you fear that you cannot act justly, then marry only one. This is what happens with Quranic verses in practice. Fragments are taken and presented boldly in gatherings and writings. The verse is, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُمْ 4:3, meaning, if you fear that you cannot deal justly with orphan women, widows left without husbands, widows with children whose affairs cannot be resolved fairly, then one way to protect them is to marry them, thereby ensuring their care. And then comes the next condition, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً 4:3, meaning, but if you fear that you cannot act justly, then marry only one. Second marriage and social conditions. The Quran, brothers, has expressed this matter with great clarity. The fundamental law is one marriage, but in exceptional circumstances, like during war, a temporary provision was made. In an Islamic community, this situation could become critical. Muslim women cannot marry non-Muslims, neither disbelievers, nor polytheists, nor even people of the book. In Medina, when war began, many young men were martyred, reducing the number of men while the number of women increased. Muslim women fled from Mecca, leaving behind their disbelieving husbands, and came to Medina. This situation arose. These women could not marry non-Muslims, while the number of Muslim men was decreasing and women were increasing. For such a crisis, the Quran provided a solution. وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. If you fear that their affairs cannot be resolved justly, then you may marry up to 4 to protect and support them. But the next condition is equally vital. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً. If you fear that you cannot act justly, then only one marriage is permitted. Justice here encompasses everything, fairness to the new wife and equally to the existing wife. True justice requires the consent of the first wife, otherwise injustice begins from the very first day. Yet in practice, verses are often fragmented, and only the part about 2, 3, or 4 is quoted, ignoring the conditions that preceded. Clarification of men's degree over women. In the same way, people say, look, equality has been declared, rights and responsibilities are equal, as if those 4 words were inserted by me, while the next 4 words are in the Quran itself. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ 2:28. See, the Quran says men have a degree over them, a position of advantage. Read the whole verse and the matter becomes clear. It speaks of divorce, where both parties are freed from the contract. A restriction is placed upon the woman that she cannot remarry for 4 months. The wisdom behind this restriction is explained. It is to ensure whether she is pregnant or not. For men, this restriction is not necessary, hence no waiting period is imposed upon them. Thus, the rights and responsibilities of both are equal, except in this one matter where men have an advantageous position. This daraja is in one specific case only. Otherwise, if equality is claimed, then logically the waiting period should also have been imposed upon men. Here the verse appears, وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ 2:28. This refers to one specific matter in which men have an advantageous position over women. The Quran itself explains that this daraja is limited to the issue of waiting period, idda. In divorce, both parties are freed from the contract, but the woman is restricted from remarrying for a certain period, while the man is not. This restriction is due to the necessity of confirming pregnancy, which does not apply to men. Thus, the principle remains, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ 2:28. According to the Quran, rights and responsibilities are equal. The only exception is this one matter where men have an advantageous position because the waiting period is not imposed upon them. The verse concludes, Wallahu Azizun Hakim 2:28, meaning that these restrictions are imposed with wisdom and Allah is mighty and wise. Procedure of divorce in the light of the Quran. As I mentioned earlier, I had already presented the references and laws regarding divorce. Now the relevant verse appears. الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان 2:229. Translation: Divorce may be pronounced twice, after which either the woman is retained according to the rules and kept in marriage, or she is released with kindness. The matter is simple. At-talaqu, divorce, means freedom from the marriage contract, its annulment, its cancellation, and the release of both man and woman from that bond. As explained previously, divorce is not a casual utterance, but a process. The Quran has prescribed a proper rule and procedure for it. In the Quran, the process of divorce is not left to arbitrary words, but is tied to a proper system. Husband and wife must sit together, and a mediator, thalith, is appointed to attempt reconciliation. If reconciliation fails, then a decision is given, and at that point the marital contract, aqd, is annulled. When this annulment occurs, it is called divorce. The Quran allows that if such a situation arises once, there is still room for the couple to reunite and remarry. If it happens a second time, meaning the same process is repeated, the contract is dissolved again and both are freed from the bond, even then the Quran permits reconciliation and remarry. But the Quran makes it clear, this is not a child's play to be repeated endlessly. Divorce twice is already a significant allowance. Beyond two, if the process is repeated again, then no further concession is given. The matter is settled. Divorce may occur twice with the possibility of reunion, but after that, no further opportunity remains. Misunderstanding about divorce in practice. In our society, the practice has become that if a man says the word talaq once or twice, talaq, talaq, then there is still room for reconciliation. But if he says it 3 times, then supposedly no room remains. Brothers, this is not the Quranic law. Divorce is a legal process, not a matter of repeating a word. Can God's law truly be that if a word is spoken twice, it is acceptable, but if spoken thrice, it becomes final? This is a human invention, not divine legislation. These are the kinds of practices that when non-Muslims observe them, they question, are these the eternal laws of God claimed to be superior to all worldly laws? The Quran prescribes a structured process for divorce, not a ritual of word repetition. In our society, the practice has become distorted. People think that if the word talaq is spoken once or twice, talaq, talaq, there is still room for reconciliation, but if it is spoken 3 times, then everything is finished, just like an auctioneer calling 1, 2, 3. Brothers, this is not the Quranic law. The Quran is the word of God, and he knew exactly how human beings would misuse it. Just 2 verses later, the Quran warns, وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزُوًا 2:23. Do not make the verses of Allah a mockery. The Quran makes clear that divorce is a process, not a game of repeating words. It also commands, وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَكُمْ أَن تَأْخُذُوا مِمَّا آتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ شَيْئًا إِلَّا أَن يَخَافَا أَلَّا يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ 2:29. Meaning, when divorce is taking place, it is not lawful for you to take back what you have already given them, dowry, gifts, jewelry. But if the mediator committee sees that the couple cannot uphold the limits set by Allah, and the matter of what was given is becoming an obstacle to resolution, then the Quran allows, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِيمَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ 2:29. That is, if the woman herself seeks divorce and the matter cannot be settled without her returning part of what was given, then there is no blame upon either of them if she offers it back. This shows that divorce in the Quran is a structured, just process, not a ritual of word repetition, nor a mockery of divine law. As I explained earlier, there is deep wisdom hidden in these laws. At the time of marriage, the husband gives mahr, a gift, to the wife. But this law could be abused. For example, a woman might marry, receive 50,000 rupees as mahr, and then within a week get divorced. Later, she marries again, receives another mahr, and repeats the cycle. The Quran, being the word of God, closes the door to such exploitation. It ensures that marriage and divorce are not turned into a scheme for material gain. In such cases, the mediator, judge, or family court has the authority to investigate. If it is found that no genuine marital issue has arisen and the woman is pursuing divorce merely for financial benefit, then she may be required to return what she received. This is precisely why the Quran says, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا يُقِيمَا حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا فِي مَا افْتَدَتْ بِهِ. Meaning, if you fear that the couple cannot uphold the limits set by Allah, then there is no blame upon them if the woman offers back part of what she was given in order to dissolve the contract. Thus, the Quran establishes a balance, protecting women's rights while preventing misuse of the law. Injustice towards women in divorce practices. In our society, the situation has become such that a man holds the right to divorce at any moment, without giving any reason. He simply says, talaq, 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 3 times, and the matter is considered finished. After that, the practice of halala is imposed, which I mentioned earlier. This means that a man, even in trivial anger, for example, if the food has too much salt, can pronounce divorce instantly, while the woman, innocent and blameless, suffers injustice upon injustice. She has no right to dissolve the contract on her own, even though it was entered into with her consent. She must go to the courts, while the man can end the marriage standing in his home. The Quran itself acknowledges the woman's difficulty, saying she cannot easily plead her cause before men. Yet she is forced into this position, while the man faces no such burden. Can God's law truly be of this nature? The Quran makes it clear. Tilka hududullahi fala ta'taduha, 229. These are the limits set by Allah, so do not transgress them. And further, وَمَنْ يَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ, 229. Whoever transgresses the limits of Allah, they are the wrongdoers. What we see today, the oppression of women through arbitrary divorce, is nothing but a violation of these divine limits. It is injustice, and the Quran itself calls such transgressors zalimun, wrongdoers. Divorce after 2 occurrences. The Quran explains clearly what happens after divorce has occurred twice. فَإِن طَلَّقَهَا فَلَا تَحِلُّ لَهُ مِن بَعْدُ حَتَّى تَنْكِحَ زَوْجًا غَيْرَهُ فإن طلقها فلا جناح عليهما أن يتراجعا إن ظنا أن يقيما حدود الله وتلك حدود الله يبينها لقوم يعلمون. Meaning, after 2 divorces, there is still room for reconciliation. But if divorce occurs a 3rd time, then the woman is not lawful for the man unless she marries another husband. If that subsequent marriage ends, either through divorce or widowhood, and both believe they can uphold the limits of Allah, then they may remarry each other. This shows that the Quran does not permanently shut the door. Rather, it imposes legal restrictions to prevent abuse and to encourage thoughtful decisions. The Quran further emphasizes, وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَبَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ سَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ. Meaning, when you divorce women and they reach the end of their waiting period, then either retain them honorably or release them honorably. Even at the point of separation, kindness and fairness are commanded. Maintaining decency even when relationships end. This is about husband and wife parting ways. The Quran teaches that even when ties are severed, dignity must remain. Consider how the Quran addressed the Prophet ﷺ when the Quraysh of Mecca were causing him immense harm. It said, وَهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. Leave them, but leave them in a beautiful manner. So even when cutting off relations, it must be done gracefully. In our culture, separation often turns into a spectacle, but the Quran insists that even in ending ties, one must act with nobility, not descend into cruelty. Thus, in marital separation, the same principle applies. أَوْ سَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ وَلَا تَمْسِكُوهُنَّ دِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا. Release them honorably, and do not retain them to cause harm or transgress. This means that if you choose to keep the marriage bond, it must be with sincerity and fairness, not with the intention of harming or humiliating. If you choose to part, it must be with kindness and respect. The Quran's guidance is clear. Whether maintaining or ending relationships, justice and decency must prevail.
Quranic meaning of the word Zawj. The foundation of the relationship between husband and wife in the Quran is expressed through the word Zawj. The term itself means two entities that when joined form a complete whole. If one is missing or defective, the unity is broken. For example, the two wheels of a cart are called Zawj. They must be equal and balanced. If one wheel is smaller than the other, the cart cannot move properly. If one wheel is round and the other is misshapen, the cart becomes unstable. Yet in practice, women have often been treated as the smaller wheel, considered inferior in the partnership. The reality is that the Quran presents Zawj as equality. Both parts must be aligned, balanced, and equally strong for the relationship to function. Sadly, many households reflect imbalance, where women are bound in positions of silence and endurance. Their patience sustains the family, even when they are denied the right to express pain or protest. The Quran's concept of Zawj calls for harmony and equality, not subjugation. न तड़पने की इजाज़त है न फरियाद की है, घट के दम मर जाऊं ये मर्जी मेरे सयाद की है.
Way to create a heavenly environment in family life. She cannot even utter oof, yet he thinks that by oppressing her, he has harmed her. Alas, half of humanity is kept in such a state, then how can humanity progress? The calamities that have come upon us are largely due to this. Live a life of equality at home, a life of honor, respect, and companionship. See how your household transforms, how much peace of heart you gain, how children are nurtured, and how your balanced personality influences society outside. The problem arises when a man quarrels with his wife in the morning, then goes out and, if he happens to be a magistrate, punishes an innocent person. The anger from home is discharged elsewhere. Observe those who are irritable in public matters. Their imbalance originates from their domestic life. The Quran, dear ones, creates a balanced personality within the home, and this can only happen when the two zawj, the two wheels of the cart, are equal, harmonious, companions, respectful, and honoring each other. Then see how society itself transforms. وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا. The Quran says, do not retain them to cause harm or transgression. وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ. Whoever does this, though he thinks he is oppressing his wife, in reality he is oppressing himself. What a profound statement. Quranic laws as the source of peace for humanity. See, dear ones, how the greatness of the Quran shines forth. فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ. He is oppressing himself. And here it says, وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزْوًا. Beware, do not make the laws of God a mockery. What are these laws? The Quran explains, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. Remember the blessing of Allah upon you. These laws given to you are God's blessing. In every prayer, in every rak'ah, you ask, صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. Show us the path of those upon whom you bestowed your favor. When we think of أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, we often imagine piety and asceticism as we have defined them. But if you gather the verses of the Quran that describe God's blessings, you will understand whose path you are truly asking to be shown. We often recite these words mechanically, without hope or aspiration. Yet in reality, we stand before God several times a day, facing the Qibla, asking, show us the path of those whose family life is like paradise. And here the Quran says, these family laws which make life pleasant are God's blessing. Thus, when we pray, our true desire should be, O Allah, show us the path of those whose homes are filled with peace and joy, whose family life is a heavenly life, which you have declared to be your blessing.
Dear ones, God's blessing enters the home in this way, but as soon as you declare that the man is a warden over women, then you can imagine, फिर ते ओ थानेदार ते हवालात दे कैदी दी जिंदगी है,
It is a great divine blessing. Ni'matallahi alaykum wa ma anzala alaykum min al-kitabi wal hikmati ya'izukum bihi. 231. God has enforced laws. I have said that the Quran has another miracle. A law given by a dictator or monarchy is imposed with the command, this must be done. There is no question of why it must be done. It is simply, this must be done. Our command is final. Such laws are filled with subjugation. But the Quran's law is different. Before presenting a law, it explains the circumstances. Conditions have arisen, reform is required, and for that reform, certain restrictions are proposed. These restrictions are given with reasoning, and if they are followed, the results will be pleasant. This is what happens when before a law is given, its objective is explained, why it is being enforced, what wisdom lies behind it, what necessity required it, and what results will follow. This explanation is called hikmat. It could be that a law is given without explanation and people themselves try to determine its wisdom. But the Quran says no, you may be deceived. When we say that such a life should be established, the results will be pleasant. You may think you can determine results yourself, but that is where differences arise. At home, people often assume that discipline requires one ruler, one master. If life is lived with a whip, with a king or warden in the household, then orders are enforced by force. The wife sits subdued, the children live in fear, and outwardly it appears that discipline is perfect. No one dares to speak. You convince yourself that the results are pleasant, but this is merely self-determined reasoning. This is why religions, sects and laws differ so greatly. Each group is satisfied with its own way. As the Quran says, Kullu hizbin bima ladayhim farihun. Every group rejoices in what it has.
The Quranic ideology and its observable results. The Quran says that it is not enough to simply give a law. It is also necessary to explain the objective behind it, why it is being enforced, what wisdom lies within it, and what results will follow. The Quran itself specifies the outcomes so that human beings are not deceived. If the promised result occurs, it means the law is being implemented correctly. If the result does not appear, it means there is a mistake in practice and one must pause and reconsider. For example, if you follow traffic signals, accidents will not occur. This is the wisdom behind the law. If accidents still occur despite following the signals, then the lawmaker must review and identify defects and then make improvements. We have hidden the collective system of Salah for centuries. God has made clear that the laws he has given also specify the results that will follow so that people are not deceived. Regarding Salah, he says, Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkari. Salah restrains from indecency and wrongdoing. Salah is the book, the command, the law. Its wisdom is that it prevents fahsha and munkar. Every act that spreads obscenity, irrationality, or corruption in society, Salah stops it. Remember, munkar means the deceptive tricks of reason. The Quran has explained that Salah will achieve this. Whatever name you give it, whatever form you practice, if it produces this result, then the community is truly following the Salah prescribed by God. But if you are satisfied that prayer is being performed correctly, yet this result is not appearing, then one of two possibilities must be true. Either, God forbid, God said this without meaning, or there is an error in your practice. Salah performed only with outward rituals, the spacing of feet, the raising of hands, the angles of bowing and prostration, while society remains filled with fahsha and munkar, is not fulfilling its purpose. Then you must stop and think, the promised result is not appearing, so something is wrong. If instead you invent your own outcome, that Salah brings peace of mind, reward, or salvation in the hereafter, then the matter ends there. But the Quran itself has given the wisdom. Salah restrains from fahsha and munkar. This is the pragmatic test. If the results appear, the law is being followed. If they do not, then the law is not being implemented. Our faith is that Salah is the book, the command, the law. Limiting the system of Salah to mere rituals. The Quran has explained the wisdom of Salah, not only by stating its purpose, but also by warning that even those who perform Salah can be among those who deny the deen. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ 107:1. Have you seen the one who denies the deen? It continues, فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ 107:4. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ 107:5. Woe to those who pray, yet are heedless of their salah.
These are people who perform salah according to prescribed forms, ensuring every outward detail is correct, but the promised result, restraining from fahsha and munkar, does not appear. Such a person, while claiming to perform salah properly, is in fact proving God's declaration false, ma'adallah. Instead of admitting that he himself is not truly established on salah, he insists his salah is correct. The Quran calls this denial of deen. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ 107:1. Have you seen the one who denies the deen? فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمِ 107:2. That is the one who repels the orphan. وَلَا يَحُدُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ 107:3. And does not encourage feeding the poor. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ 107:4. So woe to those who pray. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ 107:5. Those who are heedless of their salah. الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ 107:6. Those who show off. وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ 107:7. And withhold small acts of kindness. The Quran declares that even those who pray can be guilty of denying the essence of deen. They perform salah outwardly, satisfied that they have fulfilled God's command, yet they neglect the orphan, ignore the hungry, and block the flow of sustenance that should reach every household. Their salah does not restrain them from fahsha and munkar, and by this they practically prove false what God has declared about salah. Instead of admitting that he himself is not truly established on salah, he insists his salah is perfectly correct. The scholars issue a verdict that the prayer has been performed and he is satisfied, yet the promised results do not appear. He never dares to say that he was at fault. The logical conclusion of this, dear brothers, is that such a person is guilty of yukathibu bid-din 107:1, denying the deen. The Quran says, Ya'idhukum bih 131. This book and wisdom admonish you. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ 131. Guard the laws of God and understand them well. It is not enough to perform the outward form, the visible rituals, and then assume the obligation is fulfilled. بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ 131. God has knowledge of everything. He sees whether salah produces its intended results or not.
Fundamental difference between God's sovereignty and human dictatorship. The Quran has declared that along with the book, hikmah, wisdom, is also revealed. This is the aspect that shows God, despite being all-powerful, is not a dictator. A dictator does not need to explain why he gives a command or what result it will produce. His every order is for his own benefit. But God's commands are for human benefit, and therefore he explains the outcomes. Just as a doctor prescribes medicine and tells the patient, if you take this 3 times a day with food, by evening the fever will subside, or at least lessen. This explanation is the hikmah. If the fever does not reduce, both the patient and the doctor must reconsider. Was the diagnosis wrong? Was the prescription incorrect? Was the medicine unsuitable? Or was it used improperly? The emphasis is always on whether the intended result appears. If it does not, then something is wrong. Our ailments have been diagnosed by the one who is the greatest physician. The prescription has been given by the absolute healer, whose remedy is described as وَشِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ, a healing for what is in the hearts, and شِفَاءٌ لِلنَّاسِ, a healing for mankind. The prescription is perfect, but if the cure is not achieved, the fault lies not in the divine law, but in its application. Na dukjai na dharma ras ai, magar khapt dawahe aur mehu.
The root cause of the disease increasing with the medicine. This is nothing but the delusion of medicine. The fever does not break, yet people say, it was written in destiny. The matter ends there. But destiny is indeed God's decree, and so is the tadbir, method he prescribed. He tells us the way by which the fever will break, and then he himself writes destiny. How can he prescribe the cure and simultaneously command the fever not to break? Dear ones, what are we doing? The Quran says, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَعِيذُكُمْ بِوَاحِدَةٍ. Say, I only admonish you with one thing. أَن تَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ مَثْنَى وَفُرَادًا. That you stand for Allah, in pairs or alone. ثُمَّ تَتَفَكَّرُوا. Then reflect. Stand and think, why did the promised result not appear? This is the command. بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٍ. He knows everything. And further, وَإِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَبَلَغْنَ أَجَلَهُنَّ فَلَا تَعْضُلُوهُنَّ أَنْ يَنْكِحْنَ أَزْوَاجَهُنَّ إِذَا تَرَاضَوْا بَيْنَهُم بِالْمَعْرُوفِ ذَلِكَ يُوعَظُ بِهِ مَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ ذَلِكُمْ أَزْكَى لَكُمْ وَأَطْهَرُ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. When divorced women reach the end of their waiting period, do not prevent them from marrying their husbands if they agree with each other in fairness. This is an admonition for those who believe in Allah and the Last Day. This is pure and better for you. Allah knows and you do not know.
The plight of divorced and widowed women in society. In our society, remarriage after divorce faces severe restrictions. Until recently, the idea of a divorced woman marrying again was almost unthinkable. To call someone divorced was enough to stigmatize her, as though she carried some crime. This perception arose from the mentality of male dominance and wardenship, which treated women like prisoners. Even when freed, society refused to restore their dignity, just as it denies respect to an innocent prisoner who has served time. Thus, divorced women were condemned to live marginalized lives, madhmuman madhuran, rejected and dishonored. Many refrained from remarriage out of fear of social disgrace, even when opportunities existed. Widows faced even harsher conditions. In Hindu society, remarriage of widows was forbidden, and this cultural influence seeped into our own traditions. A major struggle was required to break this barrier, and even prominent religious leaders resisted widow remarriage within their own households. The Quran, however, commands clearly, do not obstruct divorced or widowed women from remarrying if they wish. It rejects the oppressive customs that deny women the right to rebuild their lives and insists that dignity and freedom must be preserved.
Results of implementing family laws from the Quran and the meaning of tazkiyah. At first glance, the laws concerning family life may seem small and simple, yet the Quran emphasizes that these are directed toward those who believe in God and the hereafter. This gives them immense importance. To mock or disregard these laws while claiming faith in God and the hereafter is a contradiction. The Quran says, Aska lakum wa ataru, 2232. In common usage, aska is taken to mean purified, and atar as more purified. But here, aska means growth and development. The laws of family life, when followed, nurture the human self, leading to inner growth and transformation. This is what the Quran calls tazkiyah. Tazkiyah is not merely ritual purification or ascetic practice. It is the inner revolution that occurs when life is lived according to divine laws. Outwardly, society becomes refined and dignified. Inwardly, the self develops and matures. True purity is not just about clean clothes or outward appearance. It is about the cultivation of a balanced, dignified, and morally sound personality, what we call a good personality.
The true meaning of personality and manifestation. Today, the word personality is often understood superficially. A stylish young man, well-dressed, clean-shaven, hair set with gel, polished shoes shining, sharp creases, and a matching tie. This is what is commonly taken as personality. But the Quran says, Aska lakum wa atharu. This is purer and more nurturing for you. Then it adds, Wallahu ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun. Outward appearances are what we know, but God tells us there is something deeper that we do not know. By adhering to these laws, a true inner revolution occurs, and its manifestation is what the Quran calls a pure life and noble character. The Quran further says, La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. None can truly touch it except those who are purified. This does not mean merely physical cleanliness, like bathing or performing ablution before touching the Quran. Rather, it means that unless the heart and vision are purified, one cannot truly grasp the Quran. Thus, personality in the Quranic sense is not about outward glamour, but about the manifestation of inner purity, growth, and transformation, the essence of atar and tazkiyah.
The issue of breastfeeding, rada'a, for women. Dear brothers, after discussing remarriage for divorced women, the Quran addresses the matter of children and breastfeeding, known as rada'a. وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُتِمَّ الرَّضَاعَةَ 2:23. Mothers shall breastfeed their children for 2 complete years for those who wish to complete the period of breastfeeding. The Quran does not impose a rigid command that every mother must breastfeed for a fixed duration. It recognizes circumstances. Sometimes the mother may not have sufficient milk, sometimes the child cannot digest it, or feeding may not be possible. Thus, the Quran leaves flexibility. Elsewhere, the Quran mentions generally that the period of pregnancy and breastfeeding together is about 2.5 years, 46:15, and in another place it mentions 2 years, 31:14. These are not strict commands but general guidelines. Here, however, the matter becomes legal. If divorce occurs and there is a nursing child, the rights and responsibilities of breastfeeding must be considered within the framework of fairness and compassion. The Quran takes into account the rights of the child even in the case of divorce. It says, وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُتِمَّ الرَّضَاعَةَ 2:23. Mothers may breastfeed their children for 2 complete years if they wish to complete the period of breastfeeding. This is not a compulsory command. A woman is not legally forced to breastfeed for a fixed duration. Circumstances may prevent her, lack of milk, health issues, or conditions arising from remarriage. The Quran does not impose rigidity here. It further states, وَعَلَى الْمَوْلُودِ لَهُ رِزْقُهُنَّ وَكِسْوَتُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ 2:23. The father of the child must provide sustenance and clothing for the mother during this period, according to fairness. Then it adds, لَا تُكَلَّفُ نَفْسٌ إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا 2:23. No soul is burdened beyond its capacity. The Quran does not fix an amount for maintenance. Instead, it sets a principle. The father should provide in a way that does not become an undue burden, similar to how he supported his wife and children during married life. This establishes a balance. The child's rights are protected, the mother is not forced beyond her capacity, and the father is obligated to provide fairly and reasonably.
The Quranic standard of flexibility in family life. God does not intend to impose unnecessary hardship by fixing rigid rules. Within the framework of divine law, there are broad allowances and freedoms. The Quran sets firm boundaries where crossing them leads to ruin, but within those boundaries, it grants wide flexibility. In the context of breastfeeding and divorce, the principle is beautifully expressed. La tudara walidatan biwalidaha, wala mauludin lahu biwalide. Neither the mother should be harmed because of her child, nor the father because of his child. This is the guiding rule. If relations have broken down, the child's presence must not become a source of misery for either parent. The Quran does not dictate every detail of custody or guardianship. Instead, it lays down the principle that both sides should sit together and decide arrangements fairly. The wisdom here is clear. The child's rights are safeguarded, while both parents are protected from undue hardship. The law is not about rigid enforcement, but about ensuring justice, compassion, and balance in family life. This is the expansiveness, wusabat, of the Quran's guidance, strict in principle, generous in application.
Family laws and the standard of flexibility. The Quran makes it clear that even in sensitive matters like breastfeeding and custody, the guiding principle is balance and compassion. It says, وَعَلَى الْوَارِثِ مِثْلُ ذَلِكَ. If the father passes away, the same responsibilities transfer to the heirs. This ensures that the child is never left unsupported and the mother is not abandoned. It further emphasizes, فَإِنْ أَرَادَ فِصَالًا عَنْ تَرَادٍ مِّنْهُمَا وَتَشَاوُرٍ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا. If both parents agree, through mutual consent and consultation, to wean the child before 2 years, there is no blame. Notice the depth of this guidance. Even when marital ties are broken, the Quran insists on consultation and agreement. This shows the expansiveness of divine law. The principles are firm. The child's rights must be protected. Neither parent should be harmed, but within those principles there is wide flexibility. The Quran does not impose rigid formulas. Instead, it provides a framework of justice, compassion, and mutual understanding.
In this way, family laws in the Quran are not burdensome restrictions, but nurturing guidelines. They safeguard the dignity of both parents, protect the child's well-being, and cultivate a spirit of cooperation even in situations of separation. This is the true wisdom of divine law, strict in principle, generous in application. The Quran reminds us that even when marital contracts are dissolved, human relations remain. These must not be broken. It says, وَإِنْ أَرَدْتُمْ أَن تَسْتَرْضِعُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ. If the mother does not wish to breastfeed or is unable to, and you arrange for another woman to nurse the child, there is no blame. The only condition is, إِذَا سَلَّمْتُمْ مَا آتَيْتُمْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Whatever was agreed upon with the mother must be paid in full, fairly and honorably. After that, alternative arrangements can be made. How clear and simple these laws are. They are not burdensome nor rigid. They protect the child's rights, respect the mother's dignity, and ensure fairness in financial matters. The Quran concludes, وَاتَّقُوا. The essence is not about outward forms or rigid procedures. The essence is guarding God's laws. Whatever method achieves the purpose, protecting the child, ensuring fairness, avoiding harm, that is acceptable. The goal is the preservation of divine law, not the insistence on ritual form. This is the beauty of Quranic guidance. Principles are firm, but within them lies vast flexibility, compassion, and practicality.
The foundation of law abidance. Dear brothers, the Quran concludes this discussion with the ultimate principle. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ 2:233. Know that Allah is fully aware of what you do. This is the true basis upon which respect for law is built. It is not about whether a policeman is watching or not, nor about external enforcement. Genuine adherence to law comes from the awareness that God Himself is seeing every action. When this consciousness is alive, obedience to divine law is not mechanical or forced. It becomes natural, sincere, and enduring. The Quran shifts the focus from external surveillance to inner accountability, reminding us that the real observer is Allah, and His knowledge encompasses everything. Thus, the strength of law in Islam lies not in fear of worldly authority, but in the conviction that every deed is under the gaze of the all-seeing. This transforms law from a burden into a path of dignity, purity, and trust.
Pakistani delegation in China. No theft, no locks. Dear brothers, faith means believing that God is watching. This is the true distinction between a believer and a non-believer. Otherwise, under the supervision of a policeman, non-believing nations follow the law so strictly that we even envy them. A delegation from Pakistan once visited China. As they were about to leave the hotel, someone said, "Lock the door." The response was, "For what?" He explained, "I am going out. I will lock my room." Again they asked, "For what?" The visitors could not understand this "for what." When asked, "Why lock it?" the reply was, "Because my belongings are inside." They said, "All right, then what?" He answered, "They might get stolen." The Chinese responded, "What are you talking about? Which country do you think you are in? In our country there are no locks because there is no theft." It was not that policemen stood at every hotel door, nor soldiers. In fact, there was no police force for social order, except for matters of rebellion or state conspiracies. For the management of society, police were not needed. They said, "There is no theft here." I asked, "Why is there no theft?"
The act of theft arises from the division of mine and yours. Dear brothers, what can I tell you about why theft does not occur there? The interpreter, not a philosopher but simply one who knew the language, explained, "Theft happens when something belongs to you and I take it. But where there's no concept of yours and mine regarding possessions, how can theft exist?" My Allah, I had said, dear brothers, that refraining from theft under the watch of a soldier is one thing, but refraining even in the absence of a soldier is another. These are qualities that some nations have cultivated even without belief in God or the hereafter. And if you probe deeper, you will find that even in their hearts there exists an ideology, though false, which still produces results. Theft, he explained, occurs only when what belongs to you is taken by me. In family life, for example, the idea of stealing a cot never arises, because within the household there is no division of mine and yours. Do you see the principle here? In such a society, there is no need for policemen or locks. The matter is simple. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. Be certain that whatever you do, he is watching. Not only your outward actions, but he is aware of the betrayals of your eyes and the intentions of your heart. The Quran goes far beyond worldly systems. In worldly law, detection occurs only when intention turns into action, or at least when suspicion arises. No matter how efficient crime detection may be, it only applies once a crime is committed or suspected. Thoughts passing through the heart remain undetected, and no one can be held accountable for them. But here, the reality is that even the thoughts within the heart are known to him. Nothing that passes through my mind remains undetected. Who will present it? Where will it be presented? The Quran makes it clear in Surah Bani Israel, on the day of judgment, excuses will not stand. In worldly courts, the accused may reject the police report, challenge witnesses, or raise countless objections. But before God, none of these evasions will work. As the poet cried out, "Pakre jate hain farishton ke likhe par na haq, aadmi koi hamara dame tahreer bhi tha."
Human self as its own witness. The Quran declares that in the divine court it will not be any man who testifies against you. Kafa bi nafsika al-yawma alayka hasiba, 1714. Today your own self is sufficient as a witness against you. It will be said, Iqra kitabaka, 1714. There will be no policeman, constable, or prosecutor presenting the case. You will read your own book of deeds, and your own self will testify against you. Dear brothers, people often ask, what is the connection between faith and righteous action? If a person performs good deeds, then where does faith come in? The answer is here. Faith is the certainty that even the thoughts passing through the heart are known to him, and that one day I will testify against myself, reading my own record and place the chains upon myself. This certainty is faith, and it is the very foundation. Peace in human society cannot exist without faith. Dear brothers, whether today or 10,000 years from now, peace in human society will only be established on the day when this faith takes root. Wa'lamu anna Allaha bima ta'maluna basirun, 2:23. Dear brothers, the time has come, and the verses continue ahead. Today we have reached Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 233. We will take verse 234 next time. Rabbana taqabbal minna, innaka anta as-samiul alim.